Hey, welcome nerds. Good morning. It's Bill and Brian on the morning show that has yet to be named. I'm Bill.
I'm Brian.
And today we're going to talk about a lot of different things, starting with tabletop news.
Tabletop news.
So, Brian, we have a couple things to talk about. We're looking at two of the biggest games in tabletop gaming coming out with new editions. So we could start with Pathfinder, or we could start with Vampire. What's your pick?
Let's start with Vampire.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, back in 1993, a group of people, including world creator and author of the vampire genre of White Wolf, Mark Reinhagen, came up with this game, and then had a whole bunch of various horror-related games: werewolf, vampire.
I'm given to understand they refer to them as genres.
Yes, genres. Mage.
Werewolf,
changeling,
demon,
wraith,
changeling,
yeah.
wraith.
So they had all these things, but Vampire was kind of like the flagship, right? So many years go by, different people come in and out of the company. I think a completely different group of people might control the company, not sure. But, you know, at a certain point, probably at that same era where Pathfinder came out, and then D&D kind of went from like 3.5 to 4th, and then 4th to 5th. There started to be like a little bit of a resurgence in interest, you know, and people. Why do you think that is? Is it movies? Is it?
I think that you're underestimating the longevity and success that World of Darkness had.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that it was gone anywhere. I mean, there were people. You know, there's a group here in LaGrange at the Baptist Church, the LaGrange Baptist, that's been playing for 15 years. There were groups at College of DuPage that have been playing since, I don't know, I was in junior high, maybe even earlier, consistently. So I don't know that, and I think part of that is the benefit of the organizations, of the org system that they use, right?
Do you think that the LARPing side of it is maybe what kept it alive versus just the tabletop game?
Yeah, I think so. See, LARPs are interesting because when you talk to D&D players and you ask them, like, have you ever LARPed, they'll either say yes, or the common response is like, no, I don't want to go and like steal things from stores because my character would do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which isn't a fair assessment of LARP, but it's very similar to going to LARPers and asking, like, do you play D&D? And them saying, like, why would I want to sit at a table and do math? So I think the LARP aspect really gave people something else to latch onto that wasn't available at a tabletop setting. And like I said, the organizational structure gave people a vested interest to stay involved.
I think, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, and I think as someone who tries to be open-minded, I did try a Vampire LARP, and this is like back in the heyday.
Sure.
This is like in the mid '90s in Chicago, and it was huge, but and it was fun.
Yeah,
I went once. I'm glad I went. I probably would have gone again, but I just never got around to it. You know what I mean? I didn't have a real strong urge to go again, but I also didn't have a distaste for it. But I think, I have this theory. Let me run this by you. I feel like part of the reason why LARPing, especially with this genre, has kind of kept this game and this company going is because cosplay has become a little bit more mainstream and more accepted. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
my feeling is that there's got to be, in some kind of Venn diagram of nerddom, there's got to be a crossover between cosplay and LARPing.
Sure.
And my assertion would be that you know, that little bit more mainstream kind of feeling that's going around with cosplay due to just the explosive growth of conventions and cosplaying events has kind of kept that going.
And the growth of cosplay in general in the States.
Right.
You know, like, it's not something that's been a huge draw for many cons for a long time, but like C2E2 is one of the biggest cosplay conventions in the country, and there's a reason for that. You know, it started up when cosplay first started to become relevant and really got big and cut its teeth during that same time period. in addition, I think a lot of the genre games, the org provides benefits for people who dress in costume. You know what I mean?
So talk a little bit about that from your experience. How does that, I guess, nurture the community side of it?
So the organizational structure in World of Darkness is interesting. I couldn't tell you how many orgs there are. I played for a little bit in a One World by Night werewolf game, where essentially what it means is your character's portable. So anybody who's playing an org game of the organization you're in, you can take your character sheet, you can port it in, and you can sit down in any place where there's LARP and where there's that organization's LARP and play in their game, right? It's the intellectual. It's the intellectual parent of Adventures League.
Okay, so it actually predated the Adventurers League.
I mean, it started with World of Darkness in '93, like One World by Night Studios.
But the idea being that if you were in Chicago and you wanted to go to LA or Atlanta or whatever, you could go and under this umbrella,
Brazil,
you'd be legit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it depends. Like, obviously, you have to find a game that's in your organization.
Right.
But I think there are many of those games. You know? And so I think like that aspect of it really drove people to stay involved because it gave them vested interest. It's also.
Do you feel like that's because it was more bottom up in terms of like the players and the almost like a grassroots kind of thing where they were in charge and empowered versus a top down thing where corporate says it has to be this and that?
Yeah, and so that's where the similarities between Adventures League and you know these orgs for World of Darkness kind of stop. Is Adventures League is a group of organizers that dictate rules because they want to keep an even playing field for all players participating, right?
Right.
And that's a different approach to the org structure in World of Darkness where everything is voted on democratically. And it runs into the same problem any democratic vote runs into. You know, it's a little bit popularity contest. It's a little bit what information gets out. It's a little bit obscuring things and rules sometimes. But ultimately, everything's voted on. You know, every genre has its own coordinator. That position is a voted in position. You have to be a player to be able to vote.
The fact that it's voted on and it's, I feel like it's representative and there's got to be a lot of trust within that community.
Sure.
For the candidacy for the people who are going to be elected. There's got to be a sense of trust in their judgment, in their experience,
right?
In their.
I mean, the other thing is like the tiers of characters benefit also, right? So in a World of Darkness game, you start out as, and all of the different genres have different labels for them, but you start as a peon and then you go to the next level and the next level, and by the time you get to like the 5th or so level, you become in Werewolf it's called an elder. I don't know what the other genres call it, but as an elder, essentially, you're no longer focused on your character. You're focused on your cairn or your tribe or your whatever.
So it's essentially like as you're moving up in that rank,
right?
It's also a social hierarchy where you're actually assuming real world responsibilities for managing stuff.
I don't know, like not by default, right? But
Right.
I don't think if you don't have an elder, you're going to be up for like the werewolf coordinator. You know what I mean? Like it's really a pool, and I don't know that there's any bylaws specifying that.
Yeah.
But if I have an elder character, because there's only so many elders allowed in the org, right? And it's like a like a regionally voted on process.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, because I only played very briefly. But if I have an elder in Chicago, there's a good chance people who are playing in New England know who my character is.
Wow.
like there's a good chance, because these organizations are pretty small and they're large online communities. So, and the people who participate in LARPs are very willing to travel for the sake of major events, right? So there's these big, almost like a D&D convention, right? But it's a whole weekend LARP, right?
So that kind of reminds me again of the overlap with cosplay, where a lot of people who are really into cosplay will work year round on their costumes, their props, all that kind of developing this stuff, and will plot out vacation time to go and be at major events that they want to be at.
I think that's a very apt comparison. I think that happens a lot. There's like the Chicago area runs, what is it called? Equinox, which is a org-wide event that people come in from all over for. They usually run it in Dixon, I think.
Wow.
So I think, there's I think the success of World of Darkness comes from these communities built around these organizations that are intimate communities. They are focused on keeping the game alive in ways that sometimes is just about keeping the game alive, and sometimes is about coming up with really interesting and creative stories to tell and plot hooks to share.
Right, and I imagine that the longer and more established groups could go either way. You could have some that are just burned out because they've run through every imaginable scenario, and they're just striving to keep the community together for the sake of the community, versus like there might be some older ones that just keep keep infusing new people, new blood, so to speak.
And like the other problem you run into is like you get a character and it's all based off like points, right? So the World of Darkness isn't a leveling system in the way that D&D is a leveling system, where you accumulate a good pool of points and then you get a bunch of abilities when you level up, right? It's more of like a piecemeal, I want to get better at this one skill. It's very much like the Unisystem or what's that, the D10 system? Those kind of systems where like every session you're getting some experience that you can spend immediately. Right? And so what happens is you end up with these characters who have spent lots of experience over the course of 5, 10, 20 years. The game's been out since 93, so reasonably there are characters who've been in the org since 93. Who they just like dump these character sheets that are 8 pages long because they have all of the abilities and they have all of the skills. They're running out of things to buy, right? So I think you run into people who like just get sick of playing a character that at some point becomes, there's no threat to their character. Right. Sometimes you get sick of, sometimes there can be dickering back and forth between people in the org. And some of that is due to like sheet jealousy, and some of that is due to like in character like frustrations between characters, which is, I mean, part of any role-playing game, and exciting. And some of it is just due to personality conflicts, right? Because some people try to, I mean, it's like any other role-playing game. Some people are going to try to abuse the rules in such a way to like get somewhere quicker than they normally would be able to. And I think that's what causes a lot of the burnout, is like the problem with being an intimate, isolated community is you deal with the same nonsense over and over and over again.
And
that's any isolated community,
and if they're able to draw new people in, I think that infusion, like any other community, can bring kind of a revitalization of plot lines, or new characters can bring kind of new plot lines. But I understand that aspect absolutely, even with my limited LARP experience. But on the flip, I have a lot of experience for tabletop vampire, and
I have none. I've never done the World of Darkness.
Well, and it's I will say that in my experience, it changed when it came out. Like, it changed my perspective, like permanently changed my perspective on tabletop role playing games. And my circle of friends went like all in once this game was introduced for a number of years.
Sure.
And we kind of backed off of D&D. And that was at the tail end of second edition and like kind of going
It's
into
my
third.
understanding, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it's my understanding that by and large, World of Darkness was kind of the first big step away from D&D and like the reasonable facsimiles of D&D, whether it's
Right.
goblins and whatever or castles and whoever.
Well, even as a genre, so, you know, like it's not so much even it's I think it's a couple things. Number one, it's the style, like the concept of storytelling versus game master, dungeon master, referee. All these other games had all these terms that were hearkening back to the more crunchy kind of game systems with a lot more charts, tables, dice rolling, math, versus, you know, the storyteller system, which really kind of focused more on the narrative and the interactive storytelling process. And, you know, their mechanic was so elegant, I think is the word I'd like to use today, because it was just simply dots and D10s, and it was very intuitive. If you weren't sure, you know, the storyteller picked a set of difficulty and the players rolled and figured out what they wanted to do. And it was really liberating to feel like you could sit down with somebody who'd never played this game before and give them a 10-minute overview and hand them a character sheet or let them make a character. And it was fast. And the depth, I think, of the role-playing too was facilitated by the mechanic.
Sure. And I think the LARP is very similar in that aspect.
Yeah.
You know, I played the LARP for about a year. And like any other role-playing game, you learn the rules that apply to you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you don't spend time memorizing every rule book.
Yeah.
Because if you're never going to grapple, don't spend 3 hours learning the 3.5 grapple rules.
Right.
You know? But I think in a similar vein, like, the LARP is very intuitive, and it's more of a Rochambeau situation than, like, dice. But the idea of, like, if my points to defend beat your points to attack,
Right.
I successfully defend. You don't
Yes.
successfully attack. Like, and it's not a lot of math involved. Like, the most you're adding is 5,
Simple math. Yeah.
10, you know?
Right.
And I think it preludes to a lot of similar system. You know, you look at the Unis system, like all flesh must be eaten in those types of games. You look at, you know, the Powered by the Apocalypse games, and you see systems where it's about +1, 2, or 3.
Right.
You know, maybe +5 if you're specialized.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're not adding, and at the time, like, you know, 3.5 came out, and by the time you hit 18th level, or third edition came out, by the time you hit 18th level, you're adding, God, you know, you're adding +17. If you have a keen weapon and you have improved critical in third edition,
Right.
you multiply +17 by 3. Like,
Yeah.
it just gets crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, condensing the math, and it's funny because I just read a tweet from Merle's last week where he was talking about how they were seriously considering, when 5th edition came out, eliminating the plus ability bonus to damage rolls.
Wow.
And eliminating the plus con to hit points.
Wow.
Because it has an effective, like, 0 impact on the game, and it shortens combat, and it shortens the numbers, right?
Right.
Because, like, the same number that you're losing on damage rolls, they're losing on hit points,
Right.
respectively. And I think, like, as more and more games focus on becoming streamlined and focus on becoming more about telling a story and more about, like, getting through the clunky aspects quickly and focusing on the engaging aspects, I think that's going to be, you know, kind of another a further renaissance of role-playing games.
Yeah, it's a little bit like a renaissance overall. I mean, the kind of explosive growth of tabletop role-playing games, but particularly, like, you know, the onset of streamers and all that kind of stuff has really facilitated kind of this renaissance overall with tabletop and LARPing, I think. But one thing that when we started talking about this was this is the 5th edition of Vampire that
Sure.
they're now releasing. So,
And I'm not familiar enough with the other editions to know
well,
what the differences are.
and I'm struggling to remember what edition I left off at, but I don't think I ever played a 4th edition.
Sure.
I know I have a World of Darkness book that's like a dark blue, and I'm thinking maybe that was a 3rd edition. But this 5th edition now, if you go to worldofdarkness.com/V5, you can download the V5 alpha rules and a scenario. So that's something that we're going to do, and we'll play test it because it's why not?
Yeah.
I like, one of the things that I loved about 5e was that they ran D&D Next. And me and my friends played through
Was all the playtest
all
stuff,
those different versions, and the opportunity to
stuff,
I mean, that just, it was like, finally there's companies who want to listen to
And I think in general,
Yeah.
we're at a time period, not just in tabletop gaming, but in business in general, where companies are more apt to listen to the people buying their product, so they keep buying their product.
Right.
Like,
Well, and it started with like software
Yeah.
development,
Sure.
with alpha testing, beta testing, and stuff. And I mean, it kind of dates me, but like I remember when Gmail came out, it was not open to everybody.
No.
You had to be like invited.
Well,
and
I remember-
I staked my claim like early on and like hoarded my
Right.
Gmail because I was like, it's magical.
I mean, Facebook was the same way.
Yeah.
Like, it was only for college students for 4 years,
Yeah.
3 years, however long.
Right.
Before they opened it up to the general public. And I don't know if that was intentionally a beta test on their part, but I like to think that as a tech company, they're savvy enough to know, like, let's focus small and then widen from there.
Yeah. Well, I think getting feedback, being willing to take feedback,
And that's
from
the killer part, right?
yeah, from the
Like-
community is huge, which I think World of Darkness, they're doing now with this V5. They're releasing alpha stuff, which is, you and I have seen some people in the last year at conventions doing playtests and stuff. And Jason Carl,
Sure.
when I met up with him last year at Gen Con, was running playtests. So
Sure.
I'm sure that in the last year things have changed.
Sure.
Like from Gen Con 2017 till the one coming up, there will be some differences. But I think it'll be interesting to download this. It's going to be bare bones,
Sure.
and just play through it and see how that works out.
Right.
And I think if there's anybody out there who's already downloaded it and you have some playthrough stuff, if you've shot video, send us a link. We'd like to kind of see what your experience was. And if you didn't shoot video or you don't want to shoot video,
Send us a message
Yeah.
and tell us what you thought.
tell us what you thought about V5 Alpha, and if you're interested in kind of sharing more information, you can go to the Initiative Coffee Company Facebook page and let us know kind of what you thought. We'd be interested.
I'm interested to see how much feedback they take to heart. I know that, like, when I played WoW, every patch that came out, they took a lot of feedback from the community in the player test runs.
Yeah.
And then, like, they would overcorrect every, like, major expansion that came out. So it would go from, like,
The monk rules to like no.
well, not even just that, but, like, it would go from, like, very accessible for casual players, like, leveling up is easy, getting gear is easy,
Yeah.
to, like, oh, if you make mistakes in dungeons, you die. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
and it's a interesting, like, swing to see, and I'm interested to see how much of that feedback World of Darkness takes on version 5.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So look forward to that. We're gonna try to shoot some playtest video with that, with a crop of people, and it'll be on the Initiative Coffee Company YouTube page. And moving on with our, we kind of went deep on that one. So
We did, yeah.
We're gonna talk about another what's new in tabletop. Our friends over at Tabletop Gaming News have posted an interesting article about the Pathfinder playtest, which
The second edition Pathfinder.
yes. So talk about mixed feelings. So here's the thing. I had limited time playing Pathfinder. My
I've never
long-running
played
campaign went from 3-5 or well, first, second, third, 3-5, fourth. Didn't really like
a week or
fourth.
two, yeah.
It was like one gaming weekend where we played fourth, and everybody was like, meh. And then
it just wasn't for you, you know. Like,
yeah, it just was.
Fourth edition takes a lot of heat.
You know what
that I
I'll
don't
say?
know it deserves.
I had fun.
Sure.
When we played fourth, I played a druid. I had fun. I liked the character. But that was
You just
about
gotta play the type. You know, like fourth edition is really good if you play the things that fourth edition intends for you to play.
Right. Yes. But then we went to Pathfinder.
Sure.
And this was, felt familiar,
Yeah.
obviously, because of a lot of the components that we had experienced with 3 and 3.5. But, wow, Pathfinder just exploded. And the community just loved it. Was like anything that they put out, the community was just buying up.
It was,
and then just so many books.
Yeah,
just a ridiculous amount of books.
It's interesting because 3.5 had that same issue.
Yeah.
I don't know why. So 3.5 was putting out 4 books a month for a long time between their campaign settings and everything else.
Right.
Like, there'd be an Eberron book, a Faerun book, and then 2 supplements in the last month that they released books.
Right.
And those were $50 or $60 a piece sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that I think Pathfinder books are smaller, right? They're little, like, small, maybe 100-page softbacks.
Yeah.
And so maybe they're a little bit cheaper, so they're more accessible that way.
But even then, there are quite a few hardcovers, and I mean, it's funny because now I see, I'm at half price books, and I'll see shelves of third and fourth edition D&D books and Pathfinder books, and if you were a person who spent hundreds of dollars, let's say, on your Pathfinder books, are you going to be resentful and angry that Paizo's releasing 2.0, or are you going to say, hey, I'm going to jump on board?
I had this same problem when 5th edition came out. Right. Because we skipped 4th in general.
Yeah.
And we just finished up a year ago. We finished up that long running 3.5 campaign that lasted 5 years.
And part of the reason it lasted 5 years was crunchiness.
Yeah, it was a lot of books,
every combat took like 4 hours.
Yeah, but that group, people in that group are like, oh, when we start over, we're going to play 5th ed, right? And I looked at them and I said, I am not changing systems until the ghost of Gary Gygax comes and takes my books away, because I'm not reinvesting in another system when this one works.
Yeah.
Right. And then I played 5th edition one time and said, oh shit, it's better. It doesn't. Sometimes a better system is just a better system.
Do you have? All right. So it's funny you mentioned the whole question about this works fine, because I have that feeling sometimes with other game systems. Like, I don't know that I need V5. Right. Like, the first edition of Vampire was fine.
Right.
Like, and the second was fine. Now, if I look at the great span of D&D, I'm like, I wouldn't even remember how to play first edition, because it's been 25 years since I played, or more. But, I'd have to have some grognard walk me through how to play first edition, and I'm pretty sure I'd be asking myself, like, why the hell am I doing this? Yeah. I think there's like, new games for the sake of a company needing to make product and needing to make more money. And to me, I can't wrap my head around why would, with the volume of just prolific amount of publications, why would there need to be a Pathfinder 2.0? And that I guess is my big question.
I'm not sure. And like, if I wasn't running a company that was spending 3 nights to 4 nights a week teaching people the system, teaching people how to play D&D,
right?
Maybe we wouldn't have switched to 5th ed. Maybe we'd still be running 3rd edition.
Yeah.
But 5th ed is just a more accessible system for new players.
I would agree. And
maybe Pathfinder 2.0 is going to take that same approach. Maybe they're realizing that the Pathfinder society is very clunky right now. Maybe they want to make that more accessible,
Harkening back to what we were talking about, community.
Yeah.
So do you think, that's another question, and we'd be interested in hearing from all of y'all in the audiences. What do you think about the reasoning for 2.0? There are going to be a lot more people who are going to have strong opinions on this, because I think I would say that Pathfinder, without a doubt, has a bigger community than Vampire at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Then
I
Vampire
would say
for sure. I thought you were going to say D&D.
no, then Vampire. But I was saying like Pathfinder people. Why do you think the motivation is? Why is 2.0 coming out? Is it necessary? And is it necessary from a standpoint of like they're really going to do a makeover to improve the flow of the game, to improve narrative, to improve mechanics? Or do you think that it's just a company putting out more product so that people are going to buy more stuff?
And we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if they take the Wizards of the Coast approach and go from 4 books a month to like a book a quarter, or like 3 books a year.
Right.
I think if they just launch Pathfinder 2.0 and continue to put out the books and the volume that they're putting them out, I think they're going to alienate a lot of their audience.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder too is, a lot of people will kit bash anyway. They'll use resource books from older editions, even though there's new rule sets, and they'll just, they'll modify it or they'll convert it. And, maybe that's a solution for people who spent $500 on Pathfinder books. You don't have to go out and buy all 2.0, new books. You
and
use
honestly,
some of those as source books.
For D&D, you don't have to buy all the books.
Right.
You know what I mean? You need 3.
Well, I mean, a funny example is after D&D Next. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. It was when we were playing Pathfinder. We do a rotation on DMing. So Dan decided that he was going to DM an old module. It was Castle Amber, an old D&D module. And so he basically converted it for Pathfinder, and the conversion went really well. And it was fun to play through something that nobody had played through in 30 years.
And that's what DM's Guild is doing now, right?
Right.
They, like, half of what they do is take old adventures and modify them to be fifth edition accessible.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. I mean, I think we might be focusing on D&D too much in a bit about Pathfinder.
Yeah.
They're different systems, although maybe just barely. But they're different companies with different decision making processes.
Right.
And we'll see, like, the one thing Wizards of the Coast has done well is really engage their community. And I think Pathfinder has done pretty well at that same thing, even using the original Pathfinder rule set.
Yeah.
Right? So
which
Pathfinder
I enjoy.
Society has as much of a turnout often as Adventurers League in a lot of communities.
Yeah.
With clunky rule sets.
Right.
So
well, maybe we could get like somebody who's a bit more well versed than us from Pathfinder Society to be a guest on the show.
So.
And maybe we can get one of them to guest on the show and talk about that kind of
That'd
stuff.
be great.
So, all right, cool swag. So one of our supporters on D&D with high school students sent us a gift of these Skull Splitter dice.
Cool.
Pretty sweet. I don't know. I guess I should cheat to that. Yeah. So Skull Splitter dice comes in a nice bag. Really quite a nice variety of colors and all that kind of stuff.
Vance really went all out for you guys.
Vance
right?
was the man. He got a set for everybody.
Too.
Now those are the high-end dice, and they're
the
real like metal kind of weighted dice. They come in a real nice metal case. Hold that up for your camera there, Brian. So Skull Splitter dice, really nice swag, and we like it. So I would say that, go to the website is skullsplitterdice.com. Pretty easy. And they have quite a nice variety of options there. Other cool swag. Let's talk about it. This was a couple months ago, but Initiative Coffee was featured in Dungeon Crate. Yeah. So we talk about that collab and how did that go?
It was. I guess there's not a ton to talk about. Dwayne's a consummate professional and really good about reaching out, and ultimately he told me he wanted coffee for the box. They were doing like in April they did like a tavern theme, and then in May they did like the next morning theme. Right? So like a hangover theme.
Nice.
So he included us in the May crate. We sent off some 550 quarter-pound bags of improved initiative.
Nice.
That went out to Dwayne's community. We got pretty decent feedback from a few people. If you happen to get Dungeon Crate and you enjoyed our product, feel free to reach out and let us know. We'd be happy to hear it. But yeah, it was a very straightforward kind of business deal that didn't feel like a business deal. It felt like Dwayne's a really approachable guy. It felt like old friends getting together and doing a cool thing. So,
Sweet.
Yeah, it worked out really well. We were happy with it. Yeah.
Now, you guys, actually, not me, you guys went to Origins.
We did.
And you were able to meet up with some people at Origins and talk a little bit about that experience, because that was kind of the most recent of the big conventions.
Sure. Yeah, Origins was, I guess, 2 weeks ago now. We met with Greg Tito, and we met with Jeremy Crawford, and met with some of the folks that stream over on D&D's Twitch channel. It was a really rewarding time. It's interesting to see how, I think a lot of times you forget how small the tabletop community is.
Yeah.
And how genuine the people involved are because of that.
Right.
So it was interesting to sit down with Greg Tito for a little bit and just like the face he puts on for, the podcast and stuff is not a face he puts on. He's just a good dude who's excited to, be talking to people who love the same things he loves.
Yeah.
I was really excited to talk to Jeremy Crawford because I verified that he's not going to give us a cease and desist for the name of our coffee roast. Kind of mostly tongue in cheek, but if it was going to be an issue, it was going to be an issue.
Right.
But yeah, we talked to a few people about some really cool opportunities that I can't really talk about yet. But in the next
you might not be able to talk about those opportunities, but talk to me about what was it like to meet Jason, and what is he kind of involved in?
Jason Alvarez?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jason Alvarez over at Realmsmith is another one of, just like Greg Tito, man. He's just a cool guy.
Yeah.
He's just a nice guy. He is really genuine. He was doing a paint and take for WizKid, Galeforce, whoever does the Beholder miniatures. There's so many companies that are doing branded miniatures right now. It's tough to keep up. But
yeah.
No, so he was there. He's now the communications director for Vallejo Paints. And so he was there on behalf of Vallejo doing these paint and takes. So DM Scotty did a paint and take. V from Crafting Muse did a paint and take. Satine and Rudy did a paint and take. There was a point where Jason was doing one on his own, and Holly Conrad showed up with Satine, and they did another one. He was just overwhelmed. He was busy all weekend.
Yeah.
He is actually moving into a new studio this week. So if you're a fan of Realmsmith and disappointed that he's not live casting this week, that's why. It'll be hopefully exciting for you because you'll get to see him in a brand new studio, which hopefully it will be a vast improvement. But he's a busy guy, he's got essentially 3 full-time jobs right now, but he still has the time to be genuine and excited to meet people who are into the hobby. And fortunately, I've interacted with him online a couple of times prior. So when he didn't recognize my name, he recognized the business name on the name badge instead, and was just excited to chat for a bit. It was good.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, we were going to segue into conventions because Gen Con will be coming up in August, and we were it was almost like before this talk started, we were thinking about, what's the experience been like, because it's been kind of a wild ride.
Yeah.
And Gen Con is Gen Con. I mean, it's a legend in and of itself, and it's the best 4 days in gaming, trademarked. Now, is it? I mean, here's the thing. I went last year. I had an absolute blast. met a lot of people, like you said, really, met a lot of really cool people, and, worked, did a lot of video, but, and saw a lot of cool stuff. And it was great. The best 4 days in gaming? I don't know.
GaryCon was real good.
Yeah.
GaryCon was good. Origins
because we
was
went
good.
to I didn't go to Origins, but we both went to
Yeah.
GaryCon, and GaryCon rocked. Like,
Yeah.
that was some gaming right there.
Yeah, and it's a different,
It's a different. I mean, it's
a whole
comparing
different
like
beast,
a grape
right?
to a watermelon,
and like
right?
they're like the conventions are there for different reasons.
Yeah.
Right. Like GaryCon is there as a fellowship of gamers to come together and play games, and Gen Con is there. I don't want to say it's a trade show, but it's a little bit of trade show. Like it's more of a trade show than a convention at this point. And it's great because it gives people access, and they're still running games and stuff. But at Origins, we were signed up to run 5 tables apiece, and I ran 2, and Chris ran 2. I expect if we were gonna run at Gen Con, it would be the same or worse versus GaryCon.
Because there's so many.
Because there's so
available.
much going on.
Yeah.
And I think in a setting like that, if you're running D&D, you really, if you want people at your table, you need to run AL. You have to run Adventures League because people show up for like experience, and they show up for that portability that they can get out of Adventures League. That even though we're trying to do a similar aspect with our tabletop and our branding and our setting, isn't there yet, right? We're not releasing modules every month. We're not worldwide. We're not, we don't have the infrastructure to give out modules so people can run them at home. Like, that's just not something that we're set up for.
Yeah.
And so I think when people go to a big event like GaryCon or like Gen Con or Origins, they're looking for that experience, that portability experience. And if they want to play a homebrew, they want to play a different system.
Yeah.
Right. And GaryCon was good because everybody's there to play games. Like, there's not a big trade show component.
Right.
There
were vendors and
hall.
stuff, and it was nice.
It was nice.
It wasn't.
But it's not anywhere. Like, we went to Origins, and there were 5 banquet halls filled with vendors. We went to GaryCon, and there were 2 barely banquet halls.
Yeah.
2 meeting rooms.
Right.
More than
there was like an
halls.
artist alley.
Yeah.
And then there was the larger hall.
Right.
And then there was some spillover.
And because of that, all of our tables filled. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we ran 4 tables apiece, and we ran 4 tables apiece.
Yeah.
And lots of people got to experience our content, and people seem to enjoy our content,
I just feel like I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con.
Sure.
But if I were not able to go, then I guess my guess is that the next closest experience from the gamer's perspective would be Gen Con. Like, that's to me the Comic-Con of gaming, like the big
gaming,
one.
yeah.
And I don't know if I'm wrong on
Similar
that.
to like a C2E2, right? Like,
right, in that
we went to
sense.
C2E2, and I'm sure that there was a gaming room, but I never saw it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
there are certain priorities that are put in place. And I mean, if you qualify the statement of the best 4 days in gaming by saying the best in terms of like the most by quantity and perhaps quality, I'm not judging, but
or exposure to new content.
Exposure to new content.
Like,
yeah. I guess it would be in that sense the best 4 days in gaming, because then it's a little more inclusive. The statement's inclusive in the sense that gaming is also including new products coming out, new terrain, new minis, new dice, whatever.
I mean, I guess the difference is the best 4 games in gaming, or the best 4 days in gaming trademark was their trademark before it became the venue, the trade show that it is. You know what I mean? Like, they've been holding onto that trademark for a while, and Gen Con has not been a trade show since its inception. It started very much as a GaryCon that got moved and got bigger and bigger and bigger, and kind of outgrew its mission, I think.
So, funny thing, last year before Gen Con, because last year's Gen Con was my first, I was kind of scouting out YouTube people for like their Gen Con prep videos, like how to prepare for Gen Con, that kind of stuff. And I had made a comment on one guy's video because I thought it was helpful. And, it was basically like, hey, great video, very helpful. I'm looking forward to going. And then someone else like trolled my comment and they were like, don't bother going. It's not even, it's a joke now. It's just a big trade show. And I got this sense, like, I'm really making a long story short, but I started to pick up these threads all over the internet of people who were typically old school guys.
Those are the same people who are like, F streamers, they're ruining the game.
Right.
How dare you bring the game out of the basements and back rooms of gaming stores?
Yeah, like, and they kind of like had that whole vibe going where, Gen Con is not, it's not about the games anymore. It's about the show. And I'm like, well, isn't that like anything? Like, isn't that like when somebody likes a band that nobody knows about and then the band, makes it?
I don't listen to them because they're on the radio now.
Yeah.
Like really? Like, you hate this band because they found success doing the thing that you love about them? Like, yeah, and like, I understand, like, if it's transitioning to a convention where it's no longer about playing games and it's about seeing new games, how you might have frustration with that, but like, go to GaryCon and shut up. You know what I mean? Like, if you want a tabletop focused convention that like isn't focused on the commercial aspects of the tabletop industry, go to a con that's focused on the non-commercial aspects of the tabletop industry, because ultimately the only way we get new games is by spending money on games. You know what I mean? A lot of companies make or break themselves at conventions like Gen Con.
Yeah. Well, it's a risk. I mean, you're going
risk.
there.
Like, there's a big cost associated with
You're paying a lot of money to be there.
You're hoping to get a lot of exposure out of it.
Yeah, exposure and sales, hopefully.
Yeah.
Speaking of exposure and sales, we're going to segue into what's hot on Kickstarter.
Okay.
So there are only 4 days left to go for the Critical Role minis. So Steamforged Games has launched a Kickstarter for the Critical Role minis.
Sure.
It's
Is that
an exciting
from the first campaign or the second campaign?
Yeah,
or
so it's both. So it's an exciting range of high quality miniatures that bring the legendary heroes of Vox Machina and Mighty Nine to life.
Okay.
They do not need your help, people.
It is fully funded.
They have,
It is fully funded and then some.
$26,000 goal, and they're at $811,000 and climbing. Let me refresh that.
I'm surprised it's not higher. Matt Colville did his Kickstarter in January or February and made $2 million on a source book. It's the most anybody's made on a source book.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised, and I don't want to make it a competition between Critical Role and Matt Colville, but I'm surprised that the web stream that brought 22 million independent viewers across 3 platforms for its campaign 1 finale isn't doing better.
Well, so it's doing fine, but why isn't it blowing up is the question, right? Now, there's all these Kickstarter exclusives at different pledge levels that you get like extra minis and, kind of like some of the NPCs and stuff.
Right.
And that's really cool. I guess that's a good incentive. My question though is like, would you say you had the money? Say the money's not the issue, but would you buy minis for like quote unquote famous characters? Like, what are you gonna do with those minis? Are you gonna, with your gaming group, are you gonna like reenact Critical Role or do your own playthrough?
Right? Because they do have their own source book.
Right.
So if you're playing in Teldore, those characters may exist.
Right.
And
it's like playing pre-gens.
Represent them.
Right. It's like, hey, let's try our own spin on it and see how we do. And
or maybe you use those as NPCs that represent those characters in Teldore. Right. Yeah, I don't know. What are they asking for the set of miniatures? What is the price point on that?
That's a good question. Let me pull this up. A pledge of £45.
Why is it? Oh, because it's a European company.
Yeah. So about $60. Includes the Vox Machina party, the Mighty Nine party, the Kickstarter exclusive Pumat Soul, 3 times Kickstarter exclusive Pumat Soul.
That's a pretty decent
the Tyrion
price.
Darrington. Yeah, so
like it's
a lot of minis for $60.
So what is that? 7, 14, close to 20 minis for $60. And the other Kickstarters, like you could spend $20 on a miniature. You think a Dwarven Forge, and or not Dwarven Forge, Hero Forge, and you're
Yeah.
spending $20 in minis. So
My wife won't watch this, so it's safe for me. She'll never watch any
Right,
of the game
right,
stuff, so
right.
it's safe for me to say this. I spent $39 on my Hero Forge mini for your game in the Bard's Tale. Ray cost me $39.
For a naked character with a frying pan.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it was the mustache and the frying pan.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, you're getting a lot of
That's
minis.
a lot of minis. And they, and the interesting thing is they wouldn't have to put out that many minis.
I gotta
right?
say, even if you didn't use the principal cast minis as like PCs, but more for NPCs,
That's still a decent price.
that's
for
a
all of
crap
those
ton of
miniatures.
PCs,
Yeah.
NPCs. Yeah, like so they're
And-
fully assembled PVC models, ready to paint, which is nice. So they're pre-primed and it's placed right out of
Just
the box.
probably gotta use a toothbrush to open up those pores a little bit.
Yeah, no, they look. I mean, the models look
great.
really good.
Yeah.
So 4 days left.
And it's interesting.
They're
'cause
at
they don't-
811,000. Do you think they'll have a surge in the last 4 days? I mean, I wonder if they're going to get.
I don't know enough about Kickstarter to know if people are like sniping the back end of a Kickstarter.
Well, I don't. I mean,
Like-
I could see why. There's no unlocks with this. Like
Right.
with Dwarven Forge and other things. They have unlocks, so people keep pumping it up because they want those rewards
Right.
to reach these goals, right?
I mean, there are
But here there's no unlocks.
some unlocks.
Yeah, but I'm saying like there
none
are
of them
like
are hidden.
10 levels
Yeah.
of
And I'm interested. I'm excited about this Kickstarter because they didn't have to set that price point where it's at.
No.
Like they could have charged $100 for 9 miniatures.
And they didn't
and
because maybe they're
people-
not dicks.
Well, and part of it is that, but like they're coming from a community like Twitch is a weird community where people will drop $75 in a day on a Twitch stream because because they got paid that day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so they're coming from a community where like they could charge whatever they wanted realistically for one of the parties of miniatures, and they would have done fine. So the fact that they're doing both parties on top of all of these extra minis for the price point that they're at is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It goes to show that they're focused on the community and not on the money, right? So we'll see.
Right.
I don't know how much you've heard about this, but Critical Role has started their own Twitch and they've started their own YouTube channels. And I guess they're gonna still broadcast on Geek and Sundry for the main stream, but they're adding more programming on their own channel.
Yeah.
And so clearly they're engaged in their community and want to do more for them, and this is more power to them.
Well, and I don't know what work what the details are with the company that's actually producing the minis. Obviously there's some some component of the monetization there, but I think their expansion was inevitable. I mean
Sure.
they're
They're the largest program on Geek and Sundry.
Right.
Like, they're the largest live play of 5th edition.
Right.
Like,
but it was inevitable, and I think it's a good thing. I
Sure.
mean, I think even at Gen Con last year, I mean, we did the video production for Maze Arcana.
Mm-hmm.
We followed around a lot of the Geek and Sundry people did a lot of documentary stuff with Gen Con, but I mean the Critical Role people were on their own planet. It was
Right.
like if
well,
you were
they didn't even broadcast from Gen Con.
No, they
had
were
a separate state. They
exactly
rented a separate theater.
right. I mean that's
Yeah.
that's the craziness of it. So
And it's a thing that kind of eclipses tabletop gaming, and it's grown larger than the sum of its parts, right? It's not just about these 9 people plus D&D plus plus a home setting plus whatever. It's a much larger entity at this point that, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time blowing smoke for Critical Role, but it's not smoke. You know what I mean? Like, they're doing it and they're putting the time in.
yeah, it's another level.
Yeah.
I mean, they're. So I'm with you. We don't need to spend a ton of time on them, but just as a commentary, like there was a time during the first show, during Vox, like where there was some backlash from like people who basically were saying, hey, you know, these are professionals. They're professional voice actors and actors, and don't think that that's how D&D should always be, because it's not. And I think it was basically people who kind of felt like either insecure
or eclipsed,
or
like their
eclipsed
games wouldn't measure up.
Yeah. Or people who just felt like being honestly cautionary and saying, hey, like, don't think that you and your friends have to be this good. D&D is about having fun.
Yeah.
You don't have to go that deep into your character. And I get that, and I respect that. You know, there's any tabletop game, role-playing games particularly, you go as deep as your group chemistry allows for. And some groups sometimes pull that together and some don't, and people have fun in their own way.
And I think like a lot of that comes from a certain population of gamers who grew up during Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
And kind of pride themselves on their victimhood a little bit, where, you know, I was playing in the basement, I was playing in the back room of game stores.
We had to hide it.
We had to hide it, you know, like, and like even as recently in 2006.
That's my generation. I'm the old guy who...
It's not just your generation.
Well, right.
You know, like even as recently in 2006, I was at, you know, college in central Illinois, and people were picketing the dorm because we were summoning demons in the basement while we were hucking dice, you know, like...
Right.
And that's a very specific community, and that's a very, like, insulated Bible Belt community, but, like, it was happening 10 years ago, not just 30.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of that is people just wanting to, like, they're special in having to have dealt with that, and, like, when it becomes an accessible hobby, all of a sudden that, like, level of credibility kind of goes out the window, because everybody's playing D&D now.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, it kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier. All right, one more quick thing. So I found this. I found this this project on Kickstarter. It's called Miremarsh, Miremarsh, a game of evil deeds, death, and tentacles for 1 to 5 players. I just like the tagline, right?
Yeah.
So it has goblins, it has, you know, weird Cthulhu-esque octopus people, and it's a tabletop game, and it looks really cool. So I'm going through the different pledge levels, and they are super short of their goal. Like, they have a $59,000 goal, and they're only at $13,000.
They have 28 days to go.
But they have 28 days to go, so it could happen. But I'm looking at this, and I'm like, it just... The amount of stuff that comes with this game is pretty incredible.
There's a lot there.
So that's just the base set.
This is like a Eldritch horror level of game pieces.
Yes. So you've got like the game pieces, you've got the minis, and the minis look dope painted.
Yeah, wow.
Like really cool.
Are you set to Euros, or is this another European
No,
company?
this is just I just happen to be
All right.
I'm digging the Euro stuff. So they have a whole bunch of different pledge levels. But the what you're getting for your 12 bog goblins. Like, even if I never played the tabletop game, from a value,
use 12 bog goblins for sure.
From a value, 12 into 60 is $5 a pop.
Right.
For really
Those
cool.
are really good sculpts. Those are like Guild Ball level sculpts. And
Yes.
Guild Ball is a weird game, but the miniatures are dynamite.
Right. I mean, there's the swamp creature mini, the Fen Lord. There's, then the actual game, and then dice.
Yeah.
And then colored base poppers, and then all the game cards. So, I mean, it's for a pretty reasonable pledge level, you get a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah.
So, these markers, which, I'm always about, like, kit bashing. Like, I love finding, like, games at Goodwill and then figuring out how to use the
them,
pieces, either for whatever props or for crafting and terrain.
Yeah,
And I'm looking at this stuff, and I'm like, they've got gold tokens, they've got equipment tokens.
That's cool.
So even if you, bought the game, I'm like, you could totally multi-use this game. But
What's
they've got
the
all
price
these.
point on
I think it was. It's in pounds. So let me look up the thing. This is the Bog Goblin pledge level of
For
45 pounds.
that? That comes with all of that
12 Bog Goblins, 12 Goblin character cards, 1 Swamp Creature, 23 custom dice. Just stop there, and that's worth $60.
$60, yeah.
Game board, 26 location tiles, 5 quest tiles, 12 monster tiles, 1 Fen Lord Kickstarter exclusive mini, 4 Fen Lords court tiles, Fenlord Kickstarter exclusive card, 6 pet cards, spell cards, bone tokens, gold tokens, equipment tokens, fish tokens, colored base poppers, and the rule book.
Wow.
All right, so like $60 American value, 45 pound Euro British value.
For the amount of stuff that's in like an Eldritch Horror game,
yes,
for $100,
yeah,
$60,
so
whatever.
crazy.
It's a
I
big
mean,
deal.
and that's, here's the thing, like nobody has money to blow, or some people do,
Right.
But like that was the thing I learned about Kickstarter with Dwarven Forge is like if you back,
If you get in early,
if you get in
ends up
early,
being cheaper
you
than
get your
coming
money's
in, yeah.
worth. Yeah, because you order that stuff later, it's not cheap. So that's Miremarsh, MIREMARSH. Here, I'll just show you this. Miremarsh. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So Brian, we went pretty long on this episode, mainly because it's not truly live. But folks, just so you know, the morning show is going to be a live show, so it won't run this long normally. But the benefit of it being live is that we'll have an open chat, so we'll be able to actually have a Q&A section at the end of every episode to talk with people, and we might even address questions or comments if we reach out to you.
in terms of logistics, I think we're starting the Monday after Gen Con.
Right. So Gen Con's going to be a big time for us. We're going to be there. If you're going to be there, find us. We'll be at the exhibitor room for live streaming, and also the role-playing game room for live streaming. Both of those ballrooms are going to be at the I'm not sure which hotel, but you'll be able to find it.
Just to verify, we're not going to be streaming. We'll be doing video.
Yeah, we'll be working. We're going to be on the crew, but we'll be around. So if you're going to be at Gen Con, track us down, find us. We always like to say hi to people. But yeah, like Brian said, we're hoping to really launch the weekly morning show live, and we'll be able to, again, take questions, get feedback from you guys. But in the meantime, if you've watched us, thanks for watching. And please go over to the Initiative Coffee Company YouTube channel and subscribe.
The faster we get to 1,000 subscribers, the faster we can integrate chat more effectively, I think.
That's right.
So 1,000 subscribers is the target. Also, if you're going to be at Gen Con, find us, and we might have a sample bag of coffee for you if you give us the secret passcode. But we're not going to tell you that today. You're going to have to start following us on social media if you want to find out what that secret passcode is.
That's right.
So we're on
YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, follow, Instagram.
Initiative Coffee Co., Initiative Coffee Company on YouTube, Init Coffee Co. on Twitter. So check us out, and hopefully we'll see you soon.